Imagine a thief who pulled off the single greatest robbery in Japanese history, without firing a single shot, without a single hostage, without a single drop of blood. Every person who has ever heard this story calls it the same thing: the smartest robbery the world has ever seen. And we're not talking about a small score here. This man walked away with 300 million Japanese yen in broad daylight. No weapons, no car chase, no shootout. And the police investigation that followed? That investigation is just as incredible as the crime itself. Sit down, get comfortable, grab something to drink, because this one is going to blow your mind. Welcome. If this is your first time here, I'm Amin, the narrator. I tell stories about the strangest, most mysterious events on the face of this earth.
Before we get into today's story, I have to be transparent with you. I spent time verifying every single detail independently before deciding to bring it to you, because this story deserves to be told right. And when you hear what actually happened, you'll understand why. This is genuinely one of the most fascinating criminal cases I've ever researched. The events of today's story took place in Japan in the year 1968. At that time, Japan was in the middle of an extraordinary economic renaissance. The entire world was riding a wave of technological revolution, and Japan wasn't just part of that wave. Japan was leading it. They were the technological capital of the globe, and that explosive economic growth had a very natural side effect. The banks were overflowing with cash. Where there's wealth, there are always people who want to take it.
And so Japan's banks became prime targets for some very ambitious criminals. Bank robberies started becoming alarmingly common across the country. But one robbery stood above every single one of them, in scale, in intelligence, and in sheer nerve. And this is how it started. There was a bank called the Nihon Trust Bank, and its manager received a letter. It arrived in his personal home mailbox, completely anonymous. When he opened it, he was stunned. It was a threat. The letter stated plainly, "Deliver 300 million yen to a specific location, or your home will be blown up." The manager read those words and felt the floor shift beneath him. He went to work the next morning and found a second letter waiting at his office. He reported it to the police immediately, and the letters kept coming, arriving with eerie regularity, alternating between his home and his office. The police placed both his house and the bank under full surveillance. They were worried the unknown sender was serious, that this wasn't a bluff, but a countdown. The manager called his staff together, explained the situation clearly, and told them all, "Stay alert, stay cautious. This threat is real, and the danger could come from anywhere." Nobody in that building was sleeping easy anymore. Then came December 10th, 1968, a specific, scheduled day. The bank had a confirmed transfer to carry out. 300 million yen in cash was to be delivered to a branch of the Toshiba Corporation. Toshiba, yes, the same Toshiba you know today. A massive company with thousands of employees. And it was the end of the year, bonus season. The company paid its employees their year-end bonuses in cash, and the bank was the one responsible for physically delivering that money. A transfer to a specific Toshiba branch in Tokyo. The bank manager assigned 4 employees for the job. They loaded the cash into 3 large bags, packed it into the trunk of a car, climbed in, and began the drive to Toshiba. It wasn't far, just a few kilometers away. This should have been the most routine delivery imaginable. But midway through the drive, a police officer on a motorcycle pulled them over. He approached the car and told them, "Unfortunately, there's been a serious incident. Your manager's home has just been bombed. There are casualties, possibly fatalities." The employees' hearts dropped. Their worst fear had come true. The anonymous threat had been real, and now the manager was in danger. The officer told them he'd stopped them for their own security, because there was intelligence suggesting explosives might also be planted in bank vehicles. He needed to inspect the car immediately. "Everyone out, spread out, let's search the vehicle together." The employees were shaking. They were terrified. They frantically searched every corner of that car with the officer,
and then he crouched down to check underneath the chassis. And suddenly, smoke began rising from under the car. That was it. The employees didn't think twice. In their minds, there was a bomb, and it was about to go off. They ran, all of them, scattered in every direction, desperate to get clear. A few seconds later, one of them peeked back around a wall, and what he saw stopped him cold. The car was gone. The officer was gone. All that remained on the road was the motorcycle, and a small flare still sending up its thin trail of smoke. At first, they didn't understand. Their first instinct was admirable. They assumed the brave officer had driven the car away from civilians to protect them. They called the bank. The manager himself picked up. They were flooded with relief, his voice calm, alive, unhurt. No bomb had hit his home. His family was safe. Everything was fine. But then the realization hit them, slowly, then all at once. There was still smoke rising from the spot where the car had been. And the thing on the ground wasn't a bomb fragment. It was a flare. That's when they understood everything. The man who had pretended to save them, he was the thief. He had engineered the bomb scare to scatter them in a panic, and the moment they ran, he climbed behind the wheel and drove away with all 300 million. The exact same amount that had been demanded in the anonymous letters. And to this day, it remains the most audacious, most intelligent robbery in Japanese history. Police flooded the scene. Officers from across the city responded. They combed the area for evidence, and they did find something. The motorcycle the fake officer had left behind. But here's the thing. It wasn't a real police motorcycle. The thief had modified it, painted it, fitted it with police markings to make it look completely authentic at a glance. The bank employees confirmed it. The man wore a genuine-looking police uniform. He had planned this meticulously and executed it flawlessly. The investigators didn't know where to begin. They tried to find anything distinctive about the scene, any identifying detail from the employees who had seen the thief up close. But there was nothing concrete, no useful description. And the police couldn't afford to treat this lightly. 300 million yen had just been stolen in broad daylight with zero resistance. So they mobilized on a scale that shocked the entire country. More than 10,000 officers were deployed across the entire city of Tokyo. Checkpoints were set up at every major road and intersection. A full citywide description of the getaway car was broadcast, and it didn't take long. They found the car, abandoned in a cemetery not far from where the robbery had taken place. But right next to it, tire tracks from a second vehicle. The thief had planned a getaway car swap in advance. He'd thought of everything. The checkpoints were already useless. The thief had switched vehicles long before any net could close around him. Detectives issued new orders. Halt the checkpoints. Stand them down. They were pointless now. The thief was long gone with 300 million yen. Meanwhile, the story had already exploded across the front page of every newspaper in the country. The entire nation was stunned. 300 million yen. Gone. And remarkably, many ordinary Japanese citizens found themselves secretly admiring the thief. Not one person had been hurt, not one shot had been fired. The whole operation had been built on pure psychological precision. The police had the motorcycle, they had the flare, they had eyewitness descriptions, and still, nothing. Investigators tried desperately to trace where the modifications had been done. Who had painted the motorcycle, where the parts came from. What tailor had made the police-style uniform, where the traffic equipment was purchased. They canvassed every shop, every paint garage, every clothing supplier in the region. Every lead ended the same way, a dead end. Everything used in the operation had been sourced so carefully that none of it could be traced back to a single person. This wasn't a crime of impulse. This was architecture. Careful, deliberate architecture. And now, here is the part of the story that will genuinely stop you in your tracks. Based on the eyewitness descriptions from the bank employees, police produced a composite sketch. and printed 750,000 copies of it. 750,000, distributed across the entire country. The investigation generated over 110,000 individual suspects. More than 170,000 officers were involved in the case at its peak. The total cost of the investigation exceeded 900 million yen, 3 times the amount that had actually been stolen. Now, many of you are going to ask, why would the government spend that much to recover an amount 3 times smaller? The answer is about something more important than money. They needed to demonstrate that Japan's security infrastructure was unbreakable, that no one could get away with this and inspire a generation of imitators. This was about national credibility, about deterrence. And yet, despite all of that, 3 suspects emerged. 3 people out of 110,000 who drew serious investigative focus. The first was the bank manager himself. Police never formally charged him, but rumors swirled relentlessly around him. The theory was simple and damning. The Toshiba money transfer was supposed to be secret. Only the manager, a handful of his employees,
and specific personnel at Toshiba were supposed to know about it. And yet, no police escort had been arranged despite the enormous sum being moved. How could an outsider possibly have known the exact date, the exact route, the exact vehicle? Add to this the fact that the threatening letters had kept arriving even while police were watching his home, and nobody could explain how they got through. All of this kept pulling attention back to the manager. The public whispered, the press speculated, but police never found the evidence they needed to make it stick. The investigation stalled. The manager was never charged, and the suspicion around him remained, unproven, but never quite gone. The second suspect's story is genuinely heartbreaking. His name was Takanaka Shuji, a taxi driver. He lived near the bank. The composite sketch bore a resemblance to him. Police noted he had professional driving skills and a knowledge of local roads. But investigators found 0 hard evidence against him. They had no grounds to arrest him. He was a person of interest, nothing more. But then the media got hold of his name. Journalists published his name, his photograph, his address. Articles declared him a prime suspect with total confidence, based on nothing more than a physical resemblance and a proximity to the crime. The story spread across the entire country. Every Japanese citizen who followed the case saw his face. Pressure from public opinion eventually forced the police to bring him in, not because of evidence, but to satisfy a nation demanding answers. And in the interrogation room, Takanaka did exactly what an innocent man would do. He produced a complete, verifiable alibi. He wasn't there. He couldn't have been. He was released, cleared, officially innocent. But the damage was already done. By the time the police announced his innocence, the entire country had already convicted him. His photograph had been in every newspaper, his name on every tongue. He lost his job, his friends disappeared, his own family turned away from him, all while being completely, legally, factually innocent. The weight of a nation's false accusation became too much to carry. Takanaka Shuji took his own life, an innocent taxi driver, destroyed by a system that failed him completely. The third suspect, and the strongest of all, was a 19-year-old named Sato Yoshire. He was a member of a local gang. He had a criminal record. He had previously been arrested for car theft, and as investigators noted, the thief had changed vehicles multiple times during the operation. Sato had something else that made investigators stop cold. He was known for his passion for motorcycles, and his father was a police officer. His father was a police officer. That meant access to real police motorcycles, police equipment, the kind of insider knowledge you'd need to convincingly replicate all of it. His physical appearance matched the composite sketch closely. He had no alibi that placed him away from the scene. On paper, This was the most compelling suspect of the entire investigation. Police were preparing to bring him in for questioning, but hours before they could make their move, they received word that Sato Yoshire had been found dead. He had taken poison. He was 19 years old, gone, before a single question had been asked. The police publicly concluded that his death confirmed his guilt, that he had learned they were coming for him and chose to end things rather than face them. But not everyone agreed, because here's what troubled investigators. When they searched his home, they found nothing. No money, no evidence, no trace of 300 million yen. And then a more disturbing theory began to surface. What if he didn't take his own life at all? What if his own father, the police officer, had silenced him to protect the family name from the shame of a criminal conviction? Or what if the gang itself had eliminated him when they realized the police were closing in and he had become a liability? The gang theory gained serious traction for one specific reason. Because when investigators started tracking gang members in the months that followed, something was very noticeably different. They were buying new houses, new cars. One member was arrested later and found with a substantial sum of cash at home, possibly a share of the 300 million. But even that wasn't enough to constitute proof. Not beyond reasonable doubt, not in a court of law. And in December 1975, 7 years after the robbery, the Japanese police officially closed the investigation. No arrest, no conviction, no resolution. The case, unsolved. Then came something even more remarkable. 20 years after the robbery, in 1988, the Japanese statute of limitations expired. Under Japanese law, the thief, whoever they were, was now legally untouchable. They could come forward, confess, give interviews, write a book. Not a single legal consequence could touch them. And yet, nobody came forward, nobody confessed, nobody claimed the legend. The 300 million yen robbery remained, and still remains, officially unsolved. Now, I want to hear what you think. Who do you believe was really behind this? That's the story of the 300 million yen robbery. I hope it was worth your time. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button. It genuinely helps more than you know. And if you're new here, I'm Amin the narrator. I tell the strangest, most mysterious true stories from across the globe. This channel is just getting started, and your support is what makes it grow. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story when it drops. And while you're here, check out this video about the most dangerous places on Earth. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.